Woo. Alrighty, I am back, and for the first non-continuation review of the year, because time doesn't seem to matter to me anymore, I thought why not, just for funsies, take a look way back at something I'm pretty nostalgic about. Now, granted, I'm nostalgic about the Lethal Weapon franchise and Shaun of the Dead. I saw both of those extremely early in my life, at least now that I'm in my 30s. But maybe take a look at something less action R-rated oriented and a little more overly kid friendly. And by that, I mean the Digimon dub. Let's start with that. Now, a little bit of backstory on this. When, usually anyway, when an anime series from Japan is brought into the US and dubbed over, they make mild changes. Now, of course, one of the most famous ones is Pokemon changing a rice ball into a donut because it makes sense. Americans love donuts, so here's a rice covered donut. The longer you think about it, the crazier you get. And that is definitely the vein with Digimon, especially the 99 Fox Kids version. This had terrible censorship and dubbing issues. Now the audio isn't it's nothing terrible, there's nothing terrible about it, but the writing for it is bad. Corny jokes, bad one-liners. Honestly, it dates the show more than the animation does. The animation still looks really good, even 20 plus years later. And then the editing down of the violence. Now, looking back on it through nostalgia glasses, I always think, oh no, the fights were really big and boisterous, but in all actuality, they did end up cutting quite a bit of that down through censorship, especially some of the darker tones that were in the original anime version. And that, even to this day, it can happen a lot with anime. And Fox Kids and so many other networks were very famous for doing that. It was the same with the Yu-Gi-Oh series for a long time. They probably even still do it to this day. One Piece had a terrible English dub. Absolutely ridiculous. But it's where I started with that show, so can't be too mad about it. But Digimon was kind of my first foray into the this is a bad dub. Which it should be noted, at the time I was about 8 years old when Digimon started, and I loved it. I was absolutely cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs over it. And boy, now being a full grown adult, there's some cracks. But having said that, I don't think it's too bad if you mute it. Like, if there's no audio, it works. The animation still manages to move the plot forward. You can kind of follow it well enough. I'm sure you miss out on some character traits, but nothing ridiculously missing. So, how does the story actually go? Well, the story is pretty much 7 kids get transported to another world where they each get a Digimon partner. Now, Digimon was based on basically a Tamagotchi digital monster in Japan. Somebody decided anyway, to make a little short film, so they did storyboards for it, and then a little while after the storyboards were done, I guess somebody came around and said, hey, let's just do a show. Let's do a show. This looks good enough, let's just do a show. Instead of a short film, let's do a movie. Let's do a show, see where we go. And that kind of exploded. There's multiple series. Japan did multiple short films. I'm sure I'll get to that at some point. But they started here. And Digimon are really interesting in a way. Now, everybody's probably seen the pictures of Pokemon. They go from a potted plant to an unpotted plant to a tree. That kind of makes sense. Digimon, on the other hand, can go from potted plant, refrigerator, velociraptor with a minigun. It kind of doesn't work that way. Now, thankfully, at least for those of us who were really little kids at the time, Digimon made sure that, for the original anime anyway, it was a pretty simple, clear, linear evolution. You start here and you move up. Whereas really it's more of a weird hodgepodge. Like if you're going to take this one and go to the next level, it can be one. You can end up with one of four, and then from there you can any one of those can end up to like one or two others, and it's interesting but gets confusing really quickly too. So I got to give the anime points on that one. It's kind of dumbing it down for kids, which was the U.S. demographic, whereas in Japan they kind of aim for a little bit more of an for all ages type of deal. So 1 point Japan, third of a point U.S. So who are our main kid characters? Well, there's Tai, the sort of de facto leader, who starts the trademark of all main characters must have goggles. He's very much a ready, fire, aim type of kid, ready to run off at a moment's notice. You could almost say he's kind of almost the bully of the group because he's willing to take a couple of practical jokes a smidge too far. From there we have Matt. Now Matt's an interesting character because he wants to be the cool loner, sits in the back of the classroom, I'm dark and brooding. But on the other hand, another one of the kids is his younger brother TK. Now early on in the show it said that they're half brothers, but they kind of retcon that later to make them actual brothers, just their parents are divorced. So okay. Now the issue with that is now Matt has the overprotective brother part, and it could go a little too much with him, even to the point of making Matt actually appear extremely stupid, which he isn't. He's actually a decently intelligent character, but when his brother's on the line, he's done. Every intelligent thought goes right out of his head. TK, on the other hand, is a couple of years younger than everybody else. So he's a real little kid, eyes wide open, smiles, oh my god, this is so cool type of kid. And he can be a bit of an issue, but he kind of ends up over the course of the show being one of my favorite characters. I don't like him as much as I end up liking Ty and Matt, but that's because the franchise just kind of really favors those two. I'll get to that. So TK is pretty interesting and does eventually come into his own. Now, then there's Sora. She's the tomboy of the group. Isn't afraid to speak her mind, but also tries to keep everything kind of mellow. Like, fight breaks out, all right, let's chill. What do we got? Let's stay on task, let's do that. So I like her even-temperedness. Then there's Izzy. He's the stereotypical nerd. Incredibly intelligent, but he has a complete lack of people skills. He has more fun looking at his computer than he does actually talking to people. I think that's definitely an interesting character trait to have. It gives him room to grow, to become more social. Another Fox Kids show, Power Rangers, had a character who went on for seasons and grew out of that and became one of the franchise's best characters, in my opinion. I'm sure I'll touch on that at some point. So that's interesting. Then there's Joe. He's a little bit older than everybody else, but not ridiculously older. And he's very much I'm the Boy Scout leader. Everybody be careful. Watch out. I've got Neosporin. Don't touch that. That kind of guy. And he can be a stick in the mud on occasion, but more often than not, he's got a good point here. There are monsters around every corner. You never know what's going to happen. So he kind of ends up being the voice of reason for a lot of really dumb situations they get themselves in. And finally, there's Mimi. Mimi is my least favorite of the 7 characters I've listed here. She is grating on me. Now, having said that, I do think that she is interesting in her own way. She's very, I kind of want to say prissy. And I'm sorry for saying that, but a little bit prissy. Very, I can't sleep on the dirt. I can't sleep here. It's not a bed. Why am I not having a fresh bath every day? Very, not the kind of character you want to be stuck in some parallel world with. Now let's touch on the other side of this, which would be their Digimon partners. Now, Digimon, as I've touched on, do evolve, so I'm not even going to bother naming the first forms that we get introduced to them, because those are their in-training forms, sort of very early in development, and they're just pudgy balls. Most they can really do is fire a bubble at you, which doesn't do anything. If you've ever fought a 3-year-old with a little bubble streamer, you got a very clear idea of how threatening these guys are. So when they meet their Digimon partners, oh hey, that's really cool. We've got Digimon. And all of them kind of generally accept it, except for Joe, who's extremely freaked out because there's a small monster chasing him around. Now, during the first episode, they get into a fight. Digimon completely useless against a 30-foot tall bug, because if you're going to start a show about monsters, you might as well start with a big monster. And with the Digimon being useless and the kids being threatened, they digivolve. Now, it's explained that digivolving is actually generally pretty simple. They need energy to do it, but it's really hard to do. Sort of like Pokemon with evolution. I have to make that comparison because more people know about Pokemon than they do Digimon. So, in order for them to digivolve more easily, they need to borrow energy from the kids. And to help them do that, there are Digivices. Now, these were what arrived to the kids while they were at summer camp before they were taken. Like, Aurora Borealis, 7 meteors hit in front of them, Digivices. Now, Digivices are just tiny little go-on-your-belt white blocks. You wouldn't think twice about walking past them at a Walmart. You really wouldn't. But they activate Digimon Digivolve. Pretty self-explanatory. So, who do we get? Tai gets Agumon, a little tiny dinosaur-looking guy. Matt gets Gabumon, a bipedal blue wolf. Izzy gets Tentamon, a bug that can fly. I kind of dig him a lot. Sora gets Beomon, a pink bird. Joe gets Gumamon, who kind of looks like a seal, like a really interesting seal with a mohawk. Dig him. He's not my favorite of this level, the rookie level, but I dig him. Mimi gets Palmon, who's kind of a plant girl. Like I'm gonna call it what it is. She looks like a plant, like if the animated series version of Poison Ivy made a small child that wasn't entirely human, just mostly plant. Palmon. And TK gets Patamon, who looks like a shaved guinea pig with ears that look like bat wings so he can fly. Yeah, Patamon isn't my entirely favorite one, but he's cool enough. I'll give him that. So, rookie levels. They're strong enough to at least kind of fight off the monster, but ultimately they all end up going over a cliff into a river. So this is where it kind of gets interesting. And it's something I'm going to kind of give it. For the next 6 episodes going forward, every episode basically focuses on one of the kids and their Digimon partner. Meaning they're going to go through some character arc, and the Digimon will digivolve to the next level, champion level. And I kind of dig this, because it builds on the characters a little bit. Tai goes first, and right off the bat it's shown that he can be a little bit impulsive, like when him and Agumon start eating their emergency food before they've even really divvied out who gets what. But this also ends up saving them in the long end, because Digimon need food in order to fight and help them digivolve, so Agumon's the only one who's able to fight this monster, and digivolves into Greymon, a gigantic T-Rex looking dude, and I love it. The next episode sees Matt having to deal with his concerns over TK, and how he doesn't want TK taking risks, other people taking risks with TK. You have to make the absolute perfect decision right now to get TK to safety. He's all that matters. You don't matter. He must... all this. And it can be a little grating, but it does lead to a really interesting scene where Matt has to pretty much put himself right in harm's way to deal with the monster of the episode, while he has Gabumon stay behind to protect TK. And it's kind of an interesting role reversal, because Matt gets caught and Gabumon decides, completely in a weird little scene of, oh, I can't just leave the kid here. Matt wants me to protect the kid, but I got to protect Matt because we're such good friends in the day I've known him. So he digivolves into Garurumon, a gigantic blue wolf, because, of course, he wins. The next episode is Sora, and this episode actually kind of brings into, like, a little bit more about the arc. Now, I haven't really mentioned the arc, which I'm just going to call the Devimon arc, because he's kind of the overlording He's the overlording jerk of this arc, and he's the one who's kind of got his own evil plan going forward, and that would involve black gears. Now they're just big black gears, no, but the entire island is full of them, hundreds, thousands, everywhere, and he's using them to take control of other Digimon, which is what happens here. Digimon gets infected. It attacks a small village that Sora and Biyomon have to help defend. Biyomon ends up digivolving to Birdramon, a gigantic firebird, because yes, destroys the black gear, peace is restored. So that's kind of interesting, but we don't even meet Devimon for another couple of episodes, so next episode is Izzy, where he actually kind of puts his brain to work trying to figure things out, like getting stuck in a battery in a gigantic factory, but the battery doesn't run on like our usual AA batteries. It actually has mathematics and symbols on the inside of it that generates the power. And when he makes a smudge, it cuts the power. So when he takes a marker and fixes it, the power comes back on. So while he's decoding it, his Digivice activates and Tentomon starts overheating, which Izzy figures out is the way to digivolve him into Kabuterimon, a gigantic beetle-looking bug guy. I dig it. Again, Black Gear, Digimon who was good, now he's bad, but they save him, so now he's good. And this is actually really interesting because this is the introduction of an Ultimate level Digimon. It's one higher than Champion level. And we don't see another Ultimate till after this arc. So the introduction of Andromon is pretty interesting. And I really love how they introduced him as being really the first episode bad guy to actually deal with more than one Champion level Digimon. Because during his fight, he ends up fighting Greymon and Garurumon and absolutely just completely holds his own 2-on-1. Doesn't break a sweat. So I really like how they at least put that in early. Now, I don't know if they already decided he was going to be this strong or if it was just the usual plot narrative of, oh, he's got to be a bigger threat. So I'm going to give him points. I'm going to give him points because I don't know. The next episode is Mimi's episode where, again, Black Gear, good Digimon, bad Digimon, all that. So she finally has to step up and actually fight because all the other kids are temporarily mind-controlled and their Digimon are locked away. Now, this also introduces Numamon, who are green sludge Digimon, who throw poo. They throw poo. Like, that's Japan. Yeah. But what's really interesting here is that the Numamon actually have a bit of their own character arc because they're after Mimi because she's so cute and all this. You know, do you want to go out with me? Which might have worked in Japan. I don't think it worked too well here, seeing as how she's supposed to be like 12. So, But when she gets threatened later by the episode's bad Digimon, who's actually it's confusing. But they actually hold their own. They step up and try to protect her as much as they can. And eventually Palmon finally decides, no, it's time to whoop ass, and digivolves into Togemon, who is a cactus with boxing gloves. I'm not making that up. I kind of love it. Togemon is my least favorite of the champion levels, but I absolutely love the design. It's probably my favorite design. So, saves the day, we move on. Now we have a Joe episode, and he's, again, trying to make the best of the situation, being responsible for everybody. So he starts hiking up the mountain at the center of the island, trying to figure out where they are, because they don't even know if they're on an island at this point. And gets attacked by a Digimon, Gear. The others try to help him, and eventually Joe finally dives off the mountain to pull the Gear out of the Digimon to help protect everybody, because everybody's pretty much getting one-shotted. And this was what eventually triggers Gomamon into digivolving into Ikakumon, who is a giant walrus guy who shoots torpedoes out of the horn on his head. I'm not making that up. I love it so much. And save the day. Digimon's good. Yeah. And then we get the introduction of Devimon, and I love the introduction of Devimon. Because we're just shown, this is Devimon. He's a bad guy. And the first thing he does is recruit 2 other Digimon. One is Ogremon and Ogre, and the other is Leomon, who's actually more of a noble warrior type of guy, fighting for truth, justice, the digital way, that kind of thing. But instead of using a black gear, Devimon actually just mind controls him. And that is so evil, and I love it. Like, the gears are cool, but there's something about just being able to completely influence somebody that it tickles my fancy. Kids are walking, find a gigantic mansion, hotel. I'm assuming it's a hotel because of the way the bathrooms are set up. So, hotel. Tons of food, eat their fill, hot showers, absolutely pristine, amazing stuff. Especially for being there for about 2 days already. Until Ogremon and Leomon and Devimon show up. And I absolutely love this because Devimon reveals it was all an illusion. And with just like a wave of his hand, everything vanishes. The only thing that actually exists is the beds the kids are sleeping on, which he then levitates into the air. And I dig it because this is absolutely ridiculous. This is the most powerful thing Devimon will do. Like, I've got no problem saying that. He mass hypnotized 8 kids and 8 Digimon to believe that this hotel existed. Not just that, like, they were all seeing the same thing at the same time. It is insane. And then he pretty much lays down that the Digidestined, which the kids are supposed to rid the digital world of all evil, and he's evil, so they gotta go. So he breaks the island into like a dozen pieces, and they just start floating away from the center mountain. And then he is about to kill the kids, but Tai's Digivice activates and frees Leomon from control. Leomon steps in, the kids go flying, he knocks Tai and Agumon onto like a little iceberg that's floating away while he holds off Devimon and Ogremon, which doesn't work because he instantly gets mind controlled again. And now the kids are scattered, the island's broken apart, they've got a big bad who they've already seen is ridiculously powerful. Wow, I love that so much. Like, that's how you kind of do like a mid-season episode. But this is almost at the tail end of the arc. Now the next 4 episodes are really interesting because we get to focus more on the camaraderie between characters. Like, the first one is Tai and Matt having to team up to try and get back to the others. Now, that's his entire goal. Let's get to the others. Let's beat Devimon. Let's do this. We got this. Where Matt is, I gotta save TK. Where's TK? I gotta save my brother. To the point that he literally traipses into a blizzard where he can't see 5 feet in front of his face on a tiny little chunk of land that his brother is most likely not even on. Stupid. Like, it really grinds into me like a belt sander here. Even Gabumon has to tell him, you're an idiot, don't do this. So eventually, Tai manages to talk Matt into, hey, no, he's got Patamon, your brother's going to be fine, let's go. So they head back for the mountain. The next episode is Izzy and Mimi. Now this one is probably the best team up because Izzy is not social, and Mimi needs social validation. So these two do not bounce at all off of each other. And I think that's kind of interesting because Mimi gets lost in a maze that's in a temple, and Izzy has to use his technology to help her get out. So it's definitely something kind of interesting, but Mimi still grates on me to an unwarranted degree. But it works. We also find out that the Digimon can't digivolve without the kid associated to them being nearby. So it kind of makes sense. But I'm kind of glad that they also just said it and then just kind of blurted it out during like the group meeting. They actually had it work its way into the plot. Mimi gets upset, so she runs off. So Patamon has to follow her while Patamon yells at Izzy. I like it. It works. Works for me. Next episode is Sora and Joe. This one's weak. Like, I have no problem with that. It's a little weak. They end up fighting Ghost Digimon, which is interesting, but yeah. The next episode is TK, who has to kind of deal with, he's alone, he's a little kid, so he's freaking out. Patamon's freaking out because he doesn't know what to do. And eventually they decide, alright, we're gonna do this, we got this, we're gonna be big boys.
and they end up fighting Primary Village. Now this introduces the idea of the Digimon life cycle in an interesting way. Digimon are digital data, and like we definitely know these days you can't destroy digital data. Once it's on the internet, it's there. And the same goes with Digimon. When they eventually die, they get reborn in Primary
Village as an egg. And then that egg hatches into a baby, which eventually becomes an in-training form, then rookie, and etc., etc. So that's definitely interesting. It's a fun enough episode. But then the final episode of the arc is where everything pops. Leomon shows up ready to kill TK when Ty, Matt, Izzy, and Mimi show up. Use their Digivices to free Leomon, and he says, yeah, you guys are destined to kill all the evil in the digital world, beat Devimon, everything goes back to normal. So they're like, let's kick his ass. Unfortunately for them, the moment they are ready to square up with Devimon, he instantly grows to about probably a good 60, 70 feet tall. So big that he can just palm their champion level Digimon, and their Digimon are big. I'm not trying to downplay just how big they are. So when I say he palms them, and they can't do nothing about it. Thankfully, Sora and Joe show up, but honestly, it's just kind of adding more bodies to the fire because he one-shots everybody left, right, and center. Even 6 champion levels aren't enough to take him. Leomon isn't enough. And then he turns his attention to TK. And I don't know if this is just a dub insert or just a really bad line delivery, but now he drops, oh, it's the youngest kid that's supposed to kill me. I'm not going to let this happen. And so he tries to take a swing at TK and Patamon, and Patamon finally digivolves into Angemon. And Angemon kind of sucks. He looks cool. I love that. But he is the one champion level that we see the least of in this show. Spoiler warning. So, on the one hand, it's very stereotypical that he would show up now at the climax of the arc and be the one to do it. It's very much an anime thing that you see so much. Goku transforming during the Frieza saga. A lot like this. Aang unlocking the Avatar state in the final battle of Avatar. Same thing. It's cool, but And Angemon uses all of his energy, even takes the light from the Digivices into himself and destroys Devimon. But he has to use all of his energy, so he dies too. And Devimon is completely chastising, just completely being just a jerk, a very sore loser, of pointing out, I'm not the strongest villain around. There are guys as strong or stronger than me. But you can't keep blowing yourself up when you run into them. Then what are you going to do, champ? And Devimon's gone, cackling laugh. I kind of love it. And Angemon is just, well, I'll come back, don't worry about it. And he fades away. And then the angel feathers come together and form a Digi-Egg. And it's just ridiculous enough for me to love. Because we've already been told that they go to Primary Village. So I'm going to call it plot convenience and just smile about it. And then some rock shift and a hologram projector shows us a little old man. And that's the arc. And I love the way it ends. I definitely think that this is the final episode of the arc is the best episode of the arc. And that's kind of the way it should be. Like let's not drag too much on that. If your finale is the best episode, that doesn't necessarily mean everything before it was bad, but it does mean that this is pretty good. And the action was pretty decent. Like there were some people getting knocked around. Angemon just kind of popping out of nowhere. I'm a little on the fence about that, but we've kind of been building up to it. And that's why I think that this arc actually holds up ridiculously well. We get introduced to everybody. Everybody gets an episode. Now TK's episode actually is the second to last episode of the arc. Everybody else comes in. We get to meet who they are, what's their story, what's their deal, who's their Digimon, what's their deal with them going to be like, and then we move on. So I like that. Then we kind of broke the team down. How are they moving forward? Now I like seeing teams that have been established, broken down, what do? Do they get up? Do they keep fighting? Do they give up and say, nah, I'm done, I'm sitting, whatever happens, happens? So I do like that their very first thoughts are, let's see what's going on. Let's get the band back together. Izzy wants to figure out what's the deal with the digital world, what's happening, what's going on. And then we have the TK episode that's all about him. He's just a kid. He's a good kid. And Patamon, while also being his protector slash friend, is himself kind of in over his head. So that was really a great compliment to this. Do I think Angemon should have showed up earlier? Yes and no. I think it would have been more interesting if he had, like a small rewrite. Have him pop up and fight Leomon in the episode before. Have him break Leomon free, and then when the fight happens, Devimon has to come at them. And they have to make their stand. Devimon knows, I gotta take this guy out now. And they get pushed right to the limit. Now, having said that, I'm also a big fan of Last Stand stories. Here comes the bad guy, what are we gonna do? Very 300 Thermopylae type. So maybe that one's just me. But overall, I think this actually worked out really well. Now, again, the jokes hurt it a lot more than it should. And I haven't seen I believe it was the 2020 reboot from Japan. I'm sure I'll watch that when they dub it, because I'm a dubber. Sorry. But I think it works out pretty good. And it's a little bit of a cliffhanger at the end to be like, what's happening next? So leaving that to kind of segue into the next one instead of, well, here's the egg, he's going to come back, watch the sun rise at that point. I kind of dig it. Does it hold up? Yeah, honestly. A lot of the shows from the 90s and early 2000s hit dated a year later, and this one really does with the dialogue, but the story is actually pretty fantastic. It's simple, but weirdly perfect. It doesn't drop too much on you, but it doesn't drop too little on you. It leaves you just enough so that you can kind of get everything going. That's a little heavy at the beginning, but by the time you get about halfway through, you're pretty much along for the ride. And maybe I will keep looking at this series and see if it all holds up or if it all kind of just falls to the wayside. But who knows? And with that, take it easy, everybody.